Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the sixth edition. We couldn't realize it's already been six sessions we have done in a couple of weeks. So we're on to a good start. Today's session is an extremely special session because we're going to cover a very important topic in this specific session. But just building on where we left last week, just wanted to recap. We sort of discussed and understood how the travel industry underwent a change from a completely offline, manual based systems to the advent of GDS, OTAs, and how the transaction volume slowly and slowly shifted from offline to an online based system. While this was happening, more and more travel agents became skeptical with these technologies. And to capture this mood, as always, I have a small cartoon I wanted to show you, wherein everybody started spending time with their travel agents. And after all the hours of discussion, said, now I'll go back and actually book the transaction online. So that was what was happening sometime in 2005 and 2006. And a lot of online travel companies started booming up. We met one of the guys, yes, I mean, last session, who started Jatra, Make My Trip. Many homegrown and international OTAs started coming to the scene. And as early as that, somebody had the vision to even think about the concept of meta search, which was very, very unheard of, at that point in time. And then slowly, started focusing on semantic based search, use AI technology, and then build a large company, which we know as Ixigo today. In fact, if we read about Alok, you will figure out that he's a true blue visionary, and he's always been ahead of his time. I mean, when everybody was starting OTAs, he started meta search. Now when everybody is winding off or consolidating OTAs, he has made Ixigo into a full blown OTA as we speak. When nobody was talking about mobile apps as early as 2009-10, that's when he started, building mobile apps for Ixigo, which was completely unheard of. People were still stuck on doing things on the desktop and laptop. And then, we talk about AI chatbots. Even myself, for last 2 years, we have been thinking about how to do, chatbots, voice with assistants. But back in 2016 or 17, if you read, you will see that Alok had the vision to come up with things like Igzi Baba and Tara, which was their voice-based assistant, for which they won an award as well. And then they focused significantly on the trains when nobody dared to think beyond IRCTC for train bookings. And the Ixigo Train app was also voted by Google as the best made in India app in 2016. Right from AI to trip planning to travel stories, if you look at this guy's vision, you will figure out that he has been way ahead of his time. And when we talk about these trends, he's the one who has been in many ways behind the scenes curating these trends rather than following it. And now when we talk about surviving through these crises, in almost 12 years, he has looked at two crises, because I was reading about him that when he started in 2007-8, his Series A was almost stuck because he was close to term sheet signing off, and then 2008 Lehman crisis happened, and he had to go through that tough journey. So this is nothing new for him. So I think all in all, a true blue, desi, aggressive entrepreneur with us, and we are so pleased to have you today with us, Alok. A warm welcome to you. And I'm going to now hand over to Ashish to have a conversation with Alok while I enjoy my coffee.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karthik. And Alok, how's your coffee?
It's pretty good. It's a cold coffee today.
All right, great. So, Alok, yes, as Karthik it says, it's been a journey for you. Now, as far as I'm personally concerned, I've always believed for a long time that this country, irrespective of the din going on OTA versus non-OTA, offline versus online, I've always believed that this country was short of at least 15, 20 good OTAs of caliber. And when I say OTAs, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to become a Make My Trip. It could have been a regional specific OTA. It could be a vernacle based OTA and so on and so forth. So I think we were about 15 or 20 OTAs short. And obviously somewhere your journey from meta search to marketplace to now a full blown OTA would have been behind this thinking. Obviously there's learning in each of the curves, but there must have been somewhere the same rational thinking of that. So what made you come here? That's number one. And number two, you always, I noticed from some information which you had sent down to me, you always talk about the next billion users, right? And you've sort of emphasized how the mobility and the usage of internet, etc., is about 34% short today in the next billion users. Now, the point I'm trying to drive in this particular part of the conversation, we all understand post-COVID, volumes will fall, transactions will fall. But here I'm talking purely about penetration. I'm talking purely about the usage and demographic of online, which you have ventured on. So, Alok, what do you say?
Yeah, so I think the two parts of your question are kind of related, and I can relate that to my journey, right? So when we started back in 2007, when we launched, we call it the desktop era, right? There was no mobile internet per se, and these were the times when you had to open multiple browsers on your website. Like all the websites would be doing the same search, and you would compare from one browser window to another to figure out where to book, right? And this was a fundamental problem that meta search came to solve back in those days, because you wouldn't want people switching browsers and spending a lot of time on various websites. However, as the internet evolved, two things happened. I mean, one is when mobile internet came, what was becoming clear is that the audience that was coming online was very different, right? So 2007, most of the people who had a broadband connection at home were also the people who used to fly, right? Today, if you look at broadband penetration, if you even look at mobile penetration, we've reached, a significant part of that next billion user segment already, right? So maybe 300 million of that next billion user segment has already come online. You might still have 700, 800 million more than can come online, but then, the reality is that the mix of audience has changed dramatically. So we are no more talking about the average Indian who's online is not a flight booker anymore. Let's live with that reality, right? Which used to be the case 10 years ago, that the average Indian who was online was actually a flight booker, right? Number two, on mobile, the meta search experience actually, suffered a lot of setbacks. So globally, if you see, not just in India, in markets wherever mobile came and sort of became dominant, whether it was China or whether it's India or elsewhere in the world, metas have transformed into marketplaces or OTAs. And the reason is very simple, that, being led into other experiences on mobile, whether it's MWeb or app of third parties, to close the transaction is a suboptimal experience, because most people, when they come inside an app, expect that app to fulfill a full stack journey, right? Right from search to booking to fulfillment to customer service. And when we realized this back in 2014, 15, we started building deeper integrations into our partners. And then over time realized that, even that won't suffice, because the customer service part is really important, right? So I think with a change of mix of audience and a change of usage pattern that we observed, Ixigo as a company has always been, like Karthik said, a little bit ahead of the curve, which sometimes is a good thing, sometimes is not. But what we foresee happening now is that the OTA model on mobile, the way it works has evolved a lot, because we're not structured like a offline travel agent who has come online, which is how most of the OTAs in the world actually started. They were set up by guys who had experience running offline businesses, whether you look at ebookers or whether you look at other OTAs around the world. They typically came out of founders who had a background running offline businesses and then started selling online, right, in travel. So the travel domain experience was important, but I think what needs to be more important in today's world is the technology aspect of it, or the productization of the consumer experience, right? And that's where I think we've been fairly ahead of the curve in innovating for the customer and saying, okay, can we automate more of this? Can we actually bring some of the clunky, difficult pieces online? It's still a very uphill challenge, to be honest, and we're still at it, so to say. Not that we have managed to complete it, but the journey has been very fulfilling, because I think we've seen it all: meta, marketplace, OTA. OTAs is still a long way to go, but the first 6 months that we've seen being an OTA has been very exciting because we are now able to fulfill an end-to-end journey for a customer.
Right. So I guess we'll have to just find the market low cost B2C model so that people can willingly and readily get into the online space. Because I've always also believed one more thing, that there is no black or white, that either you're a B2C or you're a B2B or so there's always a hybrid model in between. And I think today with post-COVID, there's more a need to have a hybrid model where you can optimize each and every cent out of the life cycle of the customer. So therefore, Alok, you and all the people who are innovative will just have to find a low-cost entry model for many more such OTAs to come into the market, I guess, right?
So I think, the barrier to entry to the OTA business, has obviously considerably fallen over time, right? Because the technology pieces required to build an OTA are pretty much commoditized, right? Today, with an AWS account and, with some knowledge of technology and a few APIs from airlines and GDSs, I think theoretically, anybody can go and set up an OTA in 6 months' time. But I think the difficult pieces in this business are really about, customer acquisition, where I think most of the OTAs out there have, spent a lot of not just time and energy, but money behind and, in building those brands and in acquiring those customers. And I think there again, we've had a very different approach to the whole thing. Because we believe that any OTA that spends 70% or more on marketing, cannot build a sustainable OTA business, right? And secondly, on the customer experience management, right? So if you look at companies like Amazon in e-commerce and the consistency of experience one is able to deliver throughout, the pre-purchase, during purchase and post-purchase funnels, and the level of confidence a customer develops over time in all the promises that the brand makes, I think you will not see, and I'm part of the problem, but you won't see any OTA in the world come close on that, right? And therefore, the NPS as an industry for us, the NPS Net Promoter Score lags behind, what it exists for e-commerce, right? Because there are sort of clunky pieces that we always go and blame the supplier or the airline on, and we are not willing to solve ourselves. And there are many things which actually fail at the last minute without anybody knowing why, because everything is fluid and real time, right? So I think some of those challenges are still out there for people to solve in the OTA market, to be honest, to build a brand integrity and customer experience level that kind of reminds people of being the best in the space and brings them back without having to spend a lot on marketing. And I think that's the challenge towards which we are kind of fighting towards.
Right. So let's bring you back to the non-air market, and let's just move on to the domestic market for a minute, which everybody is talking about. Now, there's an elephant in the room, and that elephant in the room to me is IRCTC. You got 25 million people who are carried every day by rail, I'm told. And only 10% of them, which is 1.2 million, are reserved category of seats which are hosted in IRCTC, so to say. Yeah. Now, if I draw comparison between what IRCTC does in terms of hosting those seats versus the GDS, I think we are a far cry from being what. Somewhere I think IRCTC has lost a focus from being a distributor of rail to a more of a general e-commerce websites. And that's where the elephant in the room is, because A, what are we doing about the 90% of the inventory which is not coming online? Is it possible? B, if you look at it, I'm told that 65% of all transactions of 1.2 million are done online, and balance 35 are done from the railway counters, window, etc. And of these 65, 85s are done directly by IRCTC website, and 15 by OTAs and people who invest on apps and on people like yourself. And that too, you've been strained to pay not only a heavy price in terms of the API, but also I'm told a 12 rupee per ticket as an AMC cost. And then you are curtailed of not charging beyond a certain price. So in that price, you're expected to maintain your entire establishment, promote domestic, promote railways. So I think somewhere, are they killing the goose which is laying the egg?
Well, I think, look, first of all, IRCTC, we must give credit for creating online travel in India in the first place. It was the first website that actually allowed us to go online and book anything related to travel. And the OTAs even came after that. And I think, look, over time, the challenge that one has seen is that, look, they started with a position where, they would not open up their API. In the early days, like it was hard for some of the OTAs to go and convince them to even open up their API. So they've come very far from that position now, where they're working like through partners with most of the OTAs who are selling trains. But I think, of course, there are challenges that it's very hard to build a viable, profitable large business on that category unless you have a lot of organic traffic, because at the kind of AMCs that one has to pay per ticket, the margins aren't really there. Yeah, the margins are wafer thin, and there is an upper cap on how much you can charge on a service, fee. Service charges, that an agent can take from the customer. So that definitely makes it a very challenging market to be in. I think in that market, we've just been lucky that the reason why we are so big is not because of our booking capabilities, but because, we launched ixigo Trains app as a utility app that was helping people to check whether their PNR is confirming or not, whether their train is running on time or not. And then over time, it grew into this juggernaut where you had a lot of crowdsourced data coming in, helping people, look at more accurate information just because somebody else's phone, who happens to be on that train is giving you more accurate data, right? And that's how we built the traffic organically. And that's how, when we launched booking, we were actually the last OTA to launch booking on train. And we are actually the last OTA in the market. I mean, the most recent OTA in the market by that respect, right? So November 2017 is when we launched train bookings. Our app existed, for much longer from before that. November 2018, sorry, not November 2017. So it's hardly been like a year and a half that we've been doing train bookings, and our app actually existed from 2016. So we've actually been seeing the booking side of it grow only in the last 2 years. And like you said, I think in the long term, the challenge is that, can the regulatory aspect of, train distribution be separated from, the primary entity or the supply aspect of it, right? And that's something that may be critical for the long-term growth of that market, because today, I think the supplier is the regulator. So to say, right? So we do expect that to happen at some point, given that, private trains, etc., are being encouraged by the government. And we, once things are back to normal, I think the privatization of certain routes and certain trains, should make the market more competitive, and therefore, help distributors to that extent, because, there should be stronger regulatory and distancing framework from the primary distributor itself, because railways will have to eventually open up also the unreserved ticketing market, since if we want social distancing at the railway stations, we can't expect thousands of people queuing up to buy train tickets, right, when things open up. So I think they should take that up as a priority, and they should definitely open up the unreserved ticketing market sooner rather than later, because it definitely will, it's something that people are looking forward to board, using a ticket they bought on a phone rather than, having to queue up outside. So having said that, I'm hopeful, and, I've seen, like, we've engaged with the senior leadership at IRCTC, and we've seen that they are, receptive to suggestions, and have changed a lot. I mean, have changed for the better all their processes and their strength of engagement with the various partners. So we are quite hopeful that some of these changes we are discussing will happen.
Right. I'm personally eyeing that 15% OTA market of train for strongly packaging domestic product with it.
Absolutely,
packaging
it's
domestic.
a massive opportunity.
Yeah, if you're going to be looking at the next billion users, where are they going to come from? They're going to come from this base, or they're going to come from the vernacular base, because the 40 million which currently everybody is running after is going to shrink anyway. So if you have to add to this pie, it has to be added from somewhere. So let's go down to distribution across the country. And coming back to your app, I was reading the statistics of your app usage. Panipat shows 80% usage, Patna 75%, Lucknow 83. So if I was looking at it, Bhubaneswar 42, well, but if I was looking at it, some of the small towns were seeing a very high degree of penetration of the app. The point is now here is what I'm saying, that there is a demand in tier 3, 4, 5 cities in the country. I don't know what's going to happen post-COVID, but there is certainly a demand. The Prime Minister himself has launched the village e-commerce model for rest of the businesses. So obviously, digitalization process will move on. Up till now, who is serving this demand? You don't have regular SME travel agents in the smallest of village or Bareilly, etc. So, you've had a demand supply of Amazon putting in there, taking a API from you and putting it there, or somebody servicing through a Kirana store. But to me, that is not a bad option. But it's probably not a very stable option, because I've already heard post-COVID, at least 3 fintech companies who were distributing travel and saying, travel is not a priority. We'd rather stay with utility bills. So we're not going to invest more in travel. Then suddenly they have pulled out of the equation. Yeah. What do you say? How do we reach those towns to service in the future, or create the demand?
Let's discuss about the post-COVID world and the opportunities in general, right? And I think, personally, I still feel that the next billion user category, it's not, like a homogeneous market to go after, right? So there are regional variations. There are, pockets of opportunities. If you just look at spiritual tourism or religious tourism, I think a large sustainable OTA can be built just around that if somebody did a great job at it, right? And you start looking at niches like that, and you realize that there are at least 8 to 10 niches that one can really still go after.
Or self-drive and driving holidays, which has not been explored.
So self-drive up to 200 kilometers from large cities, weekend getaways. I don't think there is a brand that rings a bell just for that at this point. There's a lot of within the city, what can you do in terms of staycations and other, because it's likely that, the first phase of lockdown opening up, we'll see more travel within the city or nearby rather than, very far off. And there are opportunities to be leveraged there. But I want to say one thing that, when people think of leveraging these opportunities, right, you got to think of it in a traditional business mindset, but applied online, which is to say that, you can do a slow and steady, profitable growth kind of business, as opposed to, making heavy investments and heavy losses and heavy marketing. Because, this next billion user segment will take 5 to 10 years to mature, right? It has just started coming online. It's probably making its first transactions online, and their first transaction might be a flight or a train or a, most likely not flight, actually mostly a train and a bus. And then if they're going very far away, to the other extreme of the country or going international, maybe it will be a flight. We've seen that for the Middle East segment, etc. So there's a large number of train app users who come to book tickets to Saudi Arabia, in our train app, but these are flight tickets, right? So there is interesting market segments there that are still untapped. But largely the opportunities I still feel are untapped are, packages, like you said, understanding what kind of packages make sense to these people, whether it is religious packages, whether it is, senior citizen packages. And we've seen some demand coming from tier 2, tier 3 towns for those kind of products. Understanding those smaller micro market segments and building and starting just from 1 or 2 of those, right? And not trying to do everything on day one, and growing organically among that set of users, right? And growing slowly and organically, building a nice, profitable company in the long term, rather than, having a sort of growth mindset from day one, right? That's very important, because I think everybody tries to build too large a business too early, and that's when people end up overspending and overinvesting and falling flat on their faces, right? So that mindset of a traditional business owner is useful now, even if when you want to build an online business, because this market will take 10 years to reach the level of maturity where everybody is buying 4 or 5 times online, just like the tier 1 market does.
Right. Yeah. So, whereas you're talking about profit, you're talking about losses, you're talking about funding. And I think there's nobody better than you to have me ask this question. You've raised 5 rounds of funding, right? I'm told.
Yeah, 3 major rounds, right?
3 major rounds, yeah. What, 35.5 million USD, if that's not a secret? That's the kind of money you've raised?
Yeah, so the primary capital that we've raised is lower than that because there was some secondary in the Series A round. But broadly, I think we've raised about 22, 23 million primary capital so far.
So tell our listeners, what's it going to be post-COVID? The funding scene, whether you're a startup or you're an existing company, everybody needs cash now. What do you see it? What's your vision on cash?
Look, I think it's fairly obvious that right now, travel is not the sector where most investors are looking at to invest, right? And the reason is very simple, that it's the sector where people expect that things will bounce back, at least 12 to 18 months later, and if not more, right? And having said that, I think where people are still open to invest is at the very early or very seed stage, right? So when you look at angel and seed investment, something that people expect will start taking off only 12 months, 18 months from now, people are still willing to look at those ideas because, everyone knows that there is a post-COVID world. It's not like things are going to end. I think it's the next 18 months where largely growth stage investing, or investment into public market companies, large companies, Series B, Series C plus companies, is going to be a challenge for most investors, because people will want to get a sense or hang of how things pan out before they actually make commitments. And cash is going to be king. So, anyone who has a strong balance sheet has a larger chance of survival. Anyone who has better unit economics, even when things bounce back, you still need those unit economics for the business to make sense, will have a stronger chance of survival. And I feel again that many of the small and traditional business owners in our country, and though they may not have large balance sheets, but they have a stronger sense of unit economics and profitability, right, in terms of how they operate. And they also have the jugaad mentality, which at times is very useful because in these times, you have to go back and think of what is it that might be the immediate opportunity. So I'll give you a few examples. Maybe intercity ground transportation, in what shape and form can that come back faster, right? If people don't want mass transit or mass travel options, maybe they want something more personalized and safe on the ground transportation side. Maybe virtual tourism and, use of VR can take off in the interim. Because if you can't travel and you want to experience, maybe there are ways to experience it without being there. And last but not the least, I think this whole weekend getaway / within 50 kilometers, within 100 kilometers of the city limits kind of travel, where you can just take up your own car and, get at a property. So some of these properties that are, let's say that have social distanced rooms and, have, let's say, a larger area at their disposal as opposed to being, just one building with 200 rooms. Right. I think those stand to benefit, and many of those are today independent, like boutique kind of properties, right, run by small business owners. So I think some of those guys can really benefit if they turn this around and say, how can we position ourselves as a, as one of the safer places to kind of vacation in this period, and how can we reach, the kind of audience who's actually looking to break out of their, vicinity once things are better. Because people will take risks slowly, right? So they will start going around the city, maybe, staycations, nearby weekend getaways, and then I expect domestic travel will pick up. We might start going back to Goa, Northeast, Kerala, etc. again at some point, and then international is the last one that will definitely take much longer, a few quarters to come back. Yeah.
So I'll hand over to Karthik for some questions, but before I do that, I have one line which I always say: collaborate and not compete, because we see everybody competing for the same pie everywhere if you look. And if you can collaborate, and it's not necessarily a formal merger, even if it has to be a formal merger, I'd rather be a fish in a large pond than, not be in a pond at all, so to say. Yeah. So
makes sense in these times.
Yeah. So over to you, Karthik, if you have some questions.
Yeah, so we'll take a couple of questions. So one question, Alok, is that do you see post-COVID, OTAs like yourself collaborating with large FMCG and retail companies to give a hybrid customer experience, especially in tier two, tier three towns?
Um, Look, I think the supply chain side of that kind of business, or the O2O or grocery or any sort of delivery business, the supply chain side is the most critical aspect, right? Which I don't think any OTA really has, let's say any core strength on. Having said that, what we do have is large distribution bases and ability to bring more demand in for those things. And some of us are already collaborating, by the way, with such companies to see if we can in the interim, start leveraging our demand funnels for their benefit. So you will see that kind of partnership and collaboration activity pick up. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, do you see Geo as a threat with the Facebook? Do you see Geo as a threat with Facebook coming in?
I think, look, Geo right now, from what we understand, is very focused on e-commerce and retail. I think at some point, obviously, they will look at travel. It could be a threat, it could be an opportunity, depending on how they wish to play this. You probably are aware that we partner a few similar large MAU apps, right? So Flipkart is a strong partner for us, on distribution. And I think for most of these horizontals, they would want to collaborate, with some players. So it could even be an opportunity from that aspect.
Okay. And last question, a little bit interesting. That if social distancing is going to be here to stay, what do you see the future of LCCs and small operators?
Low-cost carriers, look, I think, so there are two scenarios here, right? Scenario one is where social distancing needs to be implemented even inside the plane with the middle seat being gone and all that. I think in that scenario, one has to see basis demand side picking up, whether they can fill the remaining 2/3 capacity. Because if they can, then it's not such a bad thing, because the pricing, given where oil is, can be managed at a price point which can still stimulate demand, right? So the fortunate thing in this whole crisis is that oil prices are going to remain low for at least the next 12 to 18 months. And if that is the scenario, at least one of the cost items for the airline is going to give some respite. So even at half or to 2/3 capacity, there are hopes to still make money. However, I think the long-term solution, that can only be a short-term solution, right? I think the long-term solution, because middle seat also is more optics, it's not really 2 meters away, but it does give some confidence to the customer, the passenger to come. But the longer-term solution is really to have some kind of testing that is rapid and can be done at the time of boarding,
pre-boarding,
because pre-boarding, the very long-term solution obviously is to have a vaccine, but then that might be 12 months, 18 months away. But let's say 6 months from now, hopefully we have some kind of rapid testing that can be done on the spot within 5 minutes with high degree of accuracy, right? So that you can test them even at the time of getting into the airport. And, if you are in, then you don't need to worry, because everybody who's in is not a carrier.
Right, right. So I think with this, we are out of time. Thank you so much again, Alok, for spending time with us. And I think we all are going back with a lot of sort of pearls of wisdom from you. Any concluding remarks from you, Ashish?
No, just a concluding question, Alok. So how much have you knocked off from your top line on the forecast pre-COVID?
The answer to that one is changing every week. So that's all I can tell you. So far I'm not assuming anything. Once there's an announcement on things opening up is when we will start. So people do zero-based budgeting. I think it's time to do zero-based revenue budgeting.
Yeah.
And assume that there is no revenue, and work from that assumption, right? That's where most OTAs are.
But thank you, Alok.
So thank you so much, Ashish. Thanks, Alok, so much for joining us. And we will see you all for our 7th session, day after tomorrow on 28th, with Neelu Singh of HRS Travel. Till then, bye from us for now. Take care and have a great day.
Alok, take care.
Thank you.